Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders to help it grow. Delaney, Sexton, reporter, journalist extraordinaire, Fraud Friday. Lance Sexton, co-host, color commentator. Lance, but we're doing something on April 11th on equity injection. This is probably one of the most critical things SBA closers and lenders need to know, because everything else is pretty well mirrors what the regulars what they want you to do for your conventional commercial loans. But SBA equity injection is a whole new ballgame. Lance, tell us what you're talking about.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the requirements for properly documenting equity injection. And not documenting equity injection properly is one of the sources of guaranteed, one of the most significant sources of guaranteed denial, particularly on a early default loan. So we're going to help you try to understand the SOP 5010's 7.1 and what the requirements are for equity injection. And Bob, the little tidbit, for an existing business, you can do 100% financing with SBA. We'll talk about that some too as well.
Give us a preview. You're going to be in Austin? No, Dallas. You're going to be in Dallas.
We're going to be in Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth.
Delaney's going to be there as well. We're going to be at the Mid-America Lenders Conference in Fort Worth. It's one of the biggest and oldest regional conferences in SBA lending, and it's been sold out, Bob. I've had a couple of friends. I'm like, you should want an attorney that works with me on projects. I said, get signed up for Malk and go to Malk. And he jumped on, and he's on a waiting list trying to get in. So it's going to be
I'm sorry, cut you off. I know you are speaking. What is your topic?
As usual, Bob, I love to talk about servicing. So I have 2 breakout sessions for servicing that I'm going to conduct, and maybe involved in some other sessions as well. I've been asked to kind of do color commentary on another session. So I'll jump in and be involved in at least 3 training sessions that you can participate in.
Very good. And Delaney will be there. She'll be covering the conference. I think we're going to bring her in for a live report, and she'll be talking about the news of the day. So very good. We'll be sure and go up and say hi to Lance and Delaney. Delaney, IRS. We talk a lot about the DOJ and SBA, and now this is the first I've seen IRS. What is the IRS's interest in COVID fraud?
Well, it's great to see all these groups going after COVID fraud. And when I read this, it was hard to believe. I wasn't here at the start of PPP and EIDL, so it's been just about exactly 4 years later now. And the IRS announced what their investigations have been like. They've investigated over 1,600 different money laundering and tax cases related to COVID fraud, potentially totaling $9 billion, and just more than half of those came in just the last year. And what I found really impressive when I saw this, they obtained a 98.5% conviction rate for all of these PPP and EIDL fraud cases.
That's incredible.
It is.
And I assume what they are doing, Delaney, is they are going after the people who received the income and then did not report it on their taxes. Is that what we're dealing with here?
Now, that may be out of my span of knowledge. I'm not sure if I can appropriately
bail on your daughter.
Well, I think the thing that happened, first of all, most of us remember I don't remember which year, Bob. I think it was 2021.
Oh, right off the top. IRS wanted. Yeah, I'm sorry. The
IRS added, Bob, how many agents? It was hundreds, if not 1,000 or more new IRS agents. And I am pretty certain that those people jumped on PPP fraud. The IRS, it was all hands on board in terms of investigating PPP fraud. If you've worked a significant number of PPP loans, we've gotten requests from Homeland Security, from sheriff's offices, from the FBI, from SBA's Inspector General, from the IRS, and other agencies The magnitude and the amount of instances of fraud requires all hands on board, and IRS has jumped in and done a pretty amazing job of vetting out PPP fraud.
Well, the IRS wanted to tax all the small business borrowers who had their PPP loans forgiven. That was little history. That was huge. In fact, it took an act of Congress to say, no, we are not going to tax small business owners who got PPP loans forgiven, because that money was spent to retain employees for the 98% that were legitimate.
Well,
and go ahead, Lance.
Oh, I was just going to say how the IRS comes in. I am sure, Bob, if somebody got a PPP loan and did not submit for forgiveness, and we may have done a guarantee purchase on that, but they got the money, and if they did not submit for forgiveness, that money technically should show up on their tax return as other income.
Absolutely. And just because they didn't get a 1099, they are responsible for paying those taxes.
Absolutely. Anytime, well, of course, the people who did get forgiveness ended up getting a free pass on reporting that income. But again, if somebody had a PPP loan, didn't submit for forgiveness, but received the money, I'm sure the IRS has issue with that if it don't show up on their tax return.
Let's bring an update for Chris Roglieri. Interesting reporting from the Times Union out of Albany. The reporter is doing an excellent job. Some more assets that were seized. A Browning, I can't even pronounce it. You're the hunter in the group here, Lance. Satori 20-gauge shotgun valued at $3,000.
Well, Bob, I had a Browning 20-gauge myself when I was growing up. But it was not a Satori. My Browning 20-gauge shotgun was probably, of course, I'm ancient. My Browning shotgun was probably $250 when we got it, which was a lot of money back in the 70s. But not real sure what this Browning, but it must be a special edition, Bob.
Well, unfortunately for Chris, he resides in New York, and they have different gun laws than Arkansas. So that is, I'm not an expert on this, Delaney. I don't think you are either in terms of what exactly he's being charged with, but he has an extensive collection of guns, and I think the operative word there is had. Delaney, how many times has his residence been raided? Do we know?
So far, 2, and then if you include the Virginia Beach house, there was one there as well.
And in his bankruptcy filing, he has an art collection worth over $800,000. Lance, put on your liquidating hat. When someone says they have an $800,000 art collection, what's it really worth?
Bob, it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. I would think an Andy Warhol might have value, but I'd have to have help valuing and liquidating this. Delaney will tell you I tried to expose my children to art, even though their dad knew nothing at all about art. I took Delaney to MoMA and the Guggenheim and to Crystal Bridges and got them some exposure to art, but I would sit and look at it, Bob, and I'm like, that painting's worth $1 million. I'm like, anyway. I'm not a big art collector, but from a liquidation perspective, Bob, I would rather have a valuable piece of art than $800,000 worth of inventory.
Excellent analysis. I like it. He values the Warhol painting at $100,000, depicting the notorious Gambino crime boss, John Gotti. We'll see what that does. What else you got for us, Delaney?
All right, this is a story. Paradise Williams. I've had. And
we're going to get to it today. This is Delaney. You've been trying to do this for the last month. Go ahead.
I think so. I think it has been a month now. Paradise Williams was sentenced to 5 years in prison for her role in a scheme. She was the leader of a $7 million fraud ring. They managed to achieve $3.3 million from different programs, and she personally received $2 million in fraudulent funds. So she personally submitted 125 fraudulent applications to the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, the Paycheck Protection Program, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and to get unemployment benefits. And that was just her. She had, I believe, 50 other people in this scheme. So who knows how many in total. So these people were posed as fake tenants, fake landlords, fake small business owners. They submitted falsified bank statements, made false claims. And Bob, I know this is your favorite part. As we have luxury cars, they didn't explicitly state what kind of luxury cars, so I can't tell you that part. But there was also lavish trips, cosmetic surgery, jewelry, and designer goods purchased with her $2 million.
Wow.
Can you be specific on the car?
I can't. There's no specifics. I can tell you she's paying the Department of Treasury $2.7 million and more than $500,000 to the SBA.
Well, we've covered these stories, Delaney. 5 years, that's at the higher end of sentences for PPP loan fraud.
Bob, I'm going to butt in. I lied to you.
Uh-oh.
She apparently had to forfeit a Lexus sedan and a Range Rover SUV.
There you go.
What year's the Range Rover? Those are nice cars.
No year. I imagine probably a newer one.
So what would you rather have, Lance, the cars or the Andy Warhol print?
For liquidation perspective, I'd still rather have the Andy Warhol print.
Right.
I've had the pleasure, Bob and Delaney, of liquidating a plethora of cars and trucks recently, and what they get at auction is somewhat surprising. So I still would rather have the paint.
We have a couple minutes here. Walk us through that. You haven't told me about that. You get a car very quickly. How do you go through the process, and how's the recovery look?
Well, frequently there are cars that are financed as a part of an SBA loan. And if the borrower defaults and we go into liquidation, we solicit the support of national firms that will go and pick up the car and prepare it for auction, and they'll take it to auction and sell it for us. Car values are pretty good, but still, a car that was bought with $50,000 in SBA loan proceeds 3 years ago, you're probably going to be lucky to get $15,000 or $20,000 out of it now. So the recovery, and the thing why I keep saying I'd rather have the Andy Warhol print is its value probably continues to go up instead of like automobiles, equipment. I mean, it surprises me what equipment sells for. Went through an auction on a small business, and we had a pretty extensive equipment package. And it just blows my mind what we ended up having to sell those things for at a public auction. And of course, with an SBA loan, when you're liquidating, typically every sale is a public sale. So.
And what did you get on the dollar on that particular auction?
One of the loans that we were selling equipment, we got ballpark of 30 cents on the dollar.
Actually, that's pretty good if you think about it. Yeah. And that's net. Interesting. Well, very good. Delaney, have any other stories for us? Here we go.
I do, and I'm going to continue piggybacking off the IRS because they released two pretty interesting cases in March. Here we have Rami. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his role in a fraud scheme. He has to pay $9.6 million in restitution for PPP and EIDL. There's a second defendant that remains at large, but Rami here, they applied for $32 million in total on behalf of shell corporations. Some of these were granted, and then from there, they used a web of more than 50 different bank accounts to switch it around and launder all these fraud proceeds.
Lance, who sets up a bank account and puts it dormant, hoping to use it for fraud years later? I don't know how that
I don't
works.
know, Bob. Like I said, bad actors came out. What I always get amazed at, guys, in these cases are $9.6 million in restitution. Who wants to bet that our friend Rami don't have $9.6 million? Who wants to bet Rami don't have $1 million? And I'm just speculating, but the type of person that develops a fraud ring is going to spend the money on cars and trips and some of the things Delaney talks about. That money, and of course the agencies are going to do the best they can to seize as much as they can and convert. But I always get tickled at these restitution numbers, because something that would be interesting to look at 5 years from now is how much total restitution was there in PPP fraud convictions versus how much of that they collected.
They're doing pretty. I mean, they're getting as much as they can because they're going about it very quickly.
Yeah.
Unlike TARP, which took years and years and years, they're able to find funds and bank accounts, and also able to find cars that Lance can tow and sell. So that's.
They are doing an incredible job of investigating and prosecuting PPP fraud.
Delaney, where is his partner? Where is he or her alleged to be domiciling?
They're not sure. They just say that the partner is still at large.
Okay.
I mean, some of the funds that were laundered were sent overseas to Turkey and other places, but that would just be speculation on my part.
Very good. Anybody else? Here we go. Go ahead.
I do one more, and this was also from the IRS, and this was also another not very light sentence here, almost 8 years, 94 months, and he will have to pay $4.2 million. Mr. Terrence Pounds was a leader of a fraud conspiracy where he applied for EIDL loans. He would obtain personal information from people and then apply under their names and also his own names. I imagine part of what went wrong is that he was submitting similar information over and over again in different loan applications. So he did purchase a few things here, and I do have years and everything. A 2021 Chevrolet Tahoe, a 2021 Kia Telluride, haven't seen that one, a 2020 Hyundai Elantra, and a 2020 BMW X4.
All right, very good. Very good.
That was, just so you guys know, in PPP fraud, it was not uncommon for these fraud rings to use the exact same tax return and then just change the names at the top of the Schedule C. And you'd see the same tax return on more than one application. The numbers are exactly the same. The only thing different is the name on the Schedule C.
And it's interesting, the juxtaposition on this is these all these frauds. And then earlier this week, we reported that Biz to Credit and Wampley got settled with the FTC for not processing these loans quick enough. Lance, the FTC said you're going to fund them quickly, and I'm sure that was in good faith in the advertising, and then they turned down loans, and the FTC said, well, you didn't do it in the 12 to 14 days you promised, even though it's ridiculous. Go ahead.
Well, one of the causes of PPP fraud, first of all, the program itself did not cause fraud. The bad actors who took advantage of the program did. But the speed of the program was one of the elements that allowed the bad actors to step in. So it is interesting, and I understand what the FTC case was about. It was about more about false advertising, in my opinion. But the speed of the program is what opened the door for people like Terrence Pounds to take advantage of it.
And they did very much. Very good, Delaney. Well, good reporting. We'll say hello to Lance and Delaney next week. I'm going to be chasing the solar eclipse, so I may not be here on Friday. I definitely will not be here on Monday. So Monday the 8th. So we will hopefully it's not raining in Texas. The initial report says it's going to rain, which isn't good. Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
See you in Fort Worth.
Have a great weekend.